Hi, you guys. This is LQ from Coupled and Culture, where we talk all things love, leisure, and lifestyle for contemporary couples and socialites who like to put the life and work-life balance. I am coming to you guys today after a pretty long hiatus to update you on what's been going on with me. This video will be tailored directly to the trying to conceive experiences, all the drama that has ensued since you last talked to me, and just keeping you guys updated on the journey that my husband and I have been on, trying to conceive our first child together. Or, well, trying to bring home our first child together. I guess I should say that. So stay tuned and let's get right into it. All right, so the last time that I talked to you guys, we had embarked on our IVF journey, and we were lucky enough to conceive our first child. Unfortunately, that pregnancy ended in an ectopic pregnancy, which led me to a long line of IVF and fertility treatment since then. That happened in the summer of 2022. So that was August of 2022. And since then, I have had 2 more IVF cycles. So once my body was able to heal and I was able to get myself prepared to go at it again, we did so. We did a frozen embryo transfer of 1 embryo, and we were successful again. Conceived, and everything was going well. The first pregnancy, I learned at my very first scan at 6 weeks that the baby was in my right fallopian tube. But this time we actually were able to go to the first scan and determine that the baby was not only in my uterus, but there was a flickering heartbeat and it looked like it was developing properly. So we had high hopes. As time went on, I needed to go to my second ultrasound scan, which was the following week when I was 7 weeks and 1 day. And unfortunately, we discovered that the baby had not grown since the week prior. So it had grown maybe like 3 days. When we went, we were 6 weeks and 1 day. And I think when we went on week 7, we were measuring 6 weeks and 3 days, I want to say. So it had grown only 2 days worth of growth. There was still a flickering heartbeat, but it was very hard to find and it just didn't look promising. So I had graduated from my fertility clinic and I was at an OB at that time, a maternal fetal medicine doctor. And she had the unlucky job of giving us that news. And so we were back at square one. The only difference is that this time she said, it doesn't look good. However, we're going to give it another week just to see, because things can turn around. You know, it could just be that it's a slow grower, or that, you know, it's just been hard to see it or find it and measure it appropriately on the ultrasound. So she kind of like gave me a little realism, but also a little bit of hope. So she told me I could wait an additional week and go back at 8 weeks 1 day and she was sending me to a radiology center where they have better machines and they can see better. So I had to wait a treacherous week, not knowing what the fate of my pregnancy would be. I go to the other doctor, the radiologist, I think it was, I don't know, where they have better machines to see into my uterus to determine if the baby was growing or not. I get there. It's a long, like she goes through, she's taking tons of pictures. I literally sat there. She sat there in silence. I was in silence. She didn't talk to me much. And she's taking pictures. And then when she's done, she's like, okay, you can go, you know, to the front, I guess the waiting room. And the doctor was no longer there. The doctor actually went over my ultrasound, reviewed my ultrasounds remotely. So they wanted to speak to me on the phone. When I got on the phone, the doctor told me, she said, well, you know, we were able to get pictures of the baby. There's no heartbeat, but, and the baby is measuring, I want to say either still the same or a little bit lower, like maybe 5 weeks and 6 days or something like that. And she said, so it could just be that you're early, you know, and you got to give it time for the heartbeat to develop. And as I'm sitting on the phone, I'm like, I'm supposed to be 8 weeks. She was not aware, so I can't really judge her. In a sense, she was not aware of how far I should be. But I think as a doctor, and the reason I was going there is to see if I had a viable pregnancy. I feel like that she and the nurse should have been a little bit more sensitive and a little bit more aware of the circumstances, because to tell me that maybe it could be that, you know, I just have to wait when I'm really 3 weeks ahead of what I'm measuring, or 2.5 weeks ahead. That really bothered me. So when I told her that, she was like, oh, I'm so sorry. She apologized. And I left. And so I had to call my husband, because at this time he was still at work, and I had to let him know the unfortunate news. It did not survive. And at this point I had to schedule what is called a DNC. I don't know if anyone has had this procedure. This is my first time ever having it. I didn't have to schedule it. I was given a choice to either miscarriage naturally, or take some type of medication to induce the miscarriage, or do the DNC. So I opted for the DNC because I was terrified of the process of waiting to see. My body still hadn't recognized that the pregnancy was not was not developing. Who knows how long that would have taken. And the idea of taking medicine and like forcing this to happen just terrified me, because, you know, I wouldn't want to be at work and this starts taking place and I'd be traumatized along with my coworkers. So I opted for the DNC. So, I mean, luckily, if I can say luckily, my fertility clinic, you know, they do DNCs there. So I was able to schedule it with them, in a clinic that I was comfortable with, and have it done. And they were able to let me know that they would be able to test the tissue, the fetal tissue, to try to get an idea of what the cause could be. I mean, it's not definitive, but if the baby had abnormal chromosomes, then it would tell me that, and I could kind of have a little bit of closure. So we were able to get that results. I'll talk about that in another video. But after that, then it's go back home and heal, and then try to approach it again, which I did. So that all took place. My second transfer was in the end of November. I found out that the baby hadn't grown. It was December 29th of 2022, which is crazy because I found out August 29th from the first pregnancy that it was ectopic. So I found that out, and then I ended up having the DNC on early January. So at that point, I had to go through the healing process again and try to see, am I ready to do a third transfer? At this point, we had already used 2 embryos. I had 8 total, so I had 6 left. Once I followed up with my doctor and I had the conversation with my husband, we had determined that we would try to transfer 2 embryos for the third transfer. Because in my mind, and this might not make sense at all, but in my mind, I was like, maybe if I transfer 2, if one fails, at least one still has the opportunity to thrive and survive. I was okay with the possibility of having twins. We had come to terms with that. We were actually getting excited about the possibility, because in my mind I was like, I could get 2 out of the way and I don't have to think about doing this again if I don't want to, or I don't have to think about doing this again for a while. So my doctor was on board with that decision. She actually said she had been considering that as well. So we started prepping for transfer number 3. And that went well. I had to get like some procedures done that I was not expecting, because I had to make sure that, you know, there were no products of conception left over in my uterus, and that my uterus looked okay. It was still healthy after the trauma of what I had gone through. Everything looked fine. You know, the procedures that I had to do, everything came back normal and okay. So we were given the green light to move forward with transfer number 3. And I was getting excited again. It's like every time you go through this, a little bit of you, it gets chipped away. A little of your joy gets chipped away. But I mean, you can't give up, right? If you want to have a baby, you can't give up. I guess you can, but that wasn't a possibility for me. So in April, we started prepping for transfer. I started the medication protocol again. And we prepared to transfer to embryos, which we did. My embryo transfer was in April, and we put in two babies, and we were excited about it. My doctor was excited about it. My mom, my husband, everybody, my mother-in-law, we were all excited about it. And this time, like, I didn't really tell people, because the first time we told everybody close to us, and it didn't work. And the second time we told like our moms and like people who are really close to me. I shared it with them. People who would be sensitive to the outcome no matter what. And then the third time, it was like each time you just tell a little fewer people. So the third time, nobody really knew except like a close friends of mine and like our moms, siblings. And we conceived again. So I'm glad that my uterus is working, that the implantation is working. These babies are implanting. But I knew something was wrong like early on, because I always test before beta day. And when I did it this time, it was taking a long time for me to see a line that looked like a line. And on a certain day of my cycle, when I normally would take a digital pregnancy test and get pregnant, when I took it, it was not pregnant. And I was like, this is not right. Like, especially putting in two, like if two stuck, I should be getting results even sooner than before. But if one stuck, I should know by now. And it was like the lines were just so faint, and they started getting darker. And I went in to get my beta, and it came back as 13.9. And I was like, this is not good. Because the first transfer, beta day, which is always 9 days after transfer, so technically 14 DBO. Beta day, the first transfer was 28. And then it went up to 90, and then it continued to rise. Beta day for transfer number 2 was 130. And it continued to rise. So for 14 days, 9 days after transfer, 14 DPO technically, for my beta to be 13.9, it was just like, this is not, I knew it. It's like I knew in my heart, it just didn't seem good. But I had hope. I wanted to stay hopeful. And my doctor let me know, she's like, this is extremely low, gotta be honest, it's not looking good. But instead of having me come not the next, you usually go every other day. Instead of having me come the next day, like I went in on Wednesday, instead of having me come back on Friday, she told me to come back on Monday, I guess to give my body time to build up just in case. And that weekend was treacherous for me. But I ended up testing positive on the digital. So I was like, oh, it's going up, because before when I tested with the digital, it said not pregnant. Then the line started getting darker, and I'm like, okay, this is promising. And then on Sunday, it was either Sunday or Monday morning when I tested, the lines looked faint. It looked like it had gotten faint. It wasn't as dark as it was the day before. So I'm like, oh, here we go, and the morning before going to get the blood test, I said, let me take my last digital. And if this says not pregnant, then I already know my levels dropped. And I took the test, and it said not pregnant. So I already knew it was not going to be good news, but I was a good sport, and I went and did the blood work anyway. And I got it back, later that afternoon, and my levels had dropped to 3.7. So that was a wrap. I hadn't even heard back from my doctor yet, and I stopped taking the progesterone and oil injections. I stopped taking the estrogen, all of my medication, because I already knew. I'm like, it is what it is. And when I heard back from my clinic, they gave me the bad news and told me to stop the medication, which I had already done. And it was then that I had to wait to hear back from them. this has just been a very challenging journey for us, and I just wanted to make this video definitely to update everyone. I learned from the first time to go through it in real time with everybody, and to share at the same time I'm going through it was a little bit difficult for me, but talking about it after the fact is very therapeutic. And I just know that there's so many other women and couples out there who are going through this, so it's not just me. And like, to have that solace of knowing that I'm not alone, and to kind of be putting it out there for somebody else who may be experiencing the same thing or something similar, it just kind of helps to kind of give back to the process. So right now we're just waiting to see where do we go from here. We're definitely going somewhere from here. Like, I'm not done. I have see, we've used 4 embryos. I have 4 left, and now we're kind of deciding, which I talked to my doctor about this too, if we want to just do a completely new IVF cycle and try to bank some more embryos, and then the next time probably do PGTA testing, where we test the embryos to make sure that they're chromosomally normal, because the idea of continuing to transfer these embryos and not knowing the state of them and their health, I can't keep going through miscarriages and losing pregnancies. So that's our next steps. And I requested for her to allow me to do blood work to just rule out other things, any type of immune disorder or blood clotting disorder, anything else, vitamin D deficiency, anything that could be causing me to lose these babies that's outside of it being like a chromosomal issue. That's where we are. So once I get that blood work back, hopefully I can have more insight. It's kind of crazy when you hope that one of them is positive for a problem, so that at least you know what the problem is and you can address it. Because to this day, I mean, aside from having PCOS, I have no idea why we have been struggling to conceive. Every other test has been normal, and I don't know, but I would rather know than not know. So I had to do a follow-up appointment with my doctor and discuss my next steps, which I did. I had that meeting with her this week. And so we're kind of at a standstill. I really don't know what we're going to do at this point. So that's the update on our trying to conceive journey. I hope that you guys will continue to pray with and for us, and just anybody that you see or know who's struggling in that area, just kind of have grace and compassion for them, and send a prayer up, because it's not for the faint of heart. And those who are also going through this and struggling, you are not alone. It's difficult, it's not easy, but you just got to keep going, as long as you still have that drive in you to keep going. And if you ever get to the point to where you're done and you have to give up, that's okay too. In the meantime, I will probably come back on here and add another video, because I definitely want to talk about the miscarriage test results. So be on the lookout for that video, and until then, ciao.